Good afternoon, welcome to the UK Column Live. It's the 30th of January 2013 and it's just gone 1 o'clock. Myself and Brian are here as always. Good afternoon, Brian.
Good afternoon.
Can I just say you're looking rather relaxed in your pyjamas today?
Well, it's certainly not my pyjamas. I must apologise for not having a tie on and keeping the standards of UK Column if we're going to compete with
BBC.
Patton's propaganda company, the PPC, I think it really is.
Yes.
I should have a tie on. But today we're being relaxed, so there we are. And it's sunny.
And windy.
It's windy and sunny. Temperature is about 12 degrees and there's a probability of some rain, I think. Stumbling over words a bit already.
We got a little letter through the post today, didn't we?
Yeah, we'd just like to start off on the wonderful subject of the BBC, run of course by Mr. Patton. They've kindly sent us from the TV Licensing Authority. It's a pretty threatening letter. It says this unlicensed business address is being investigated, and it says down the bottom that yep, your business premises are being investigated. Unless we hear from you, one of our officers may visit your premises, and depending on the evidence they collect, this could lead to a court summons. And it's signed by a lady called Jane Jeffers, the Regional Enforcement Division. So we just found it interesting that we're being threatened. Of course, we wouldn't want a TV to watch the BBC. But obviously people around the country are receiving these threatening letters. So we spoke to TV licensing media team this morning, where of course they confirmed that the law is that if you have a TV, you should have a license. And there is absolutely no law to say that you should actually respond to any of these letters from TV licensing themselves. So we'll be emailing them later on this afternoon, and we'll keep you informed as we start to expose the sheer arrogance and affront of the BBC, which produces propaganda, pornography, violence. Jimmy Savile, they take 5 billion in revenue, and they want to send you a threatening letter if you don't want to watch it. Great, isn't it? Well, there we are.
The times we live in.
First story is the first story we've got today has been sent to us by an ex Special Forces guy who thought we'd be interesting to know that he'd had a visit from what he called the Thought Police, but 2 police officers turned up at his home address because he's actually been making some statements about one of the politicians. We can't actually name the politician, but what it's showing is that the police in Britain can't track down basic crime. At the moment they can't bring the bankers to book for major fraud and corruption. We can't deal with the criminal politicians, but you can have 2 officers on your doorstep if you dare to criticise one of Britain's politicians. So the gentleman concerned in the photo, but we're not going to name him today, but this is what's happening in Britain. And the Mail article, we've just taken the headline, "The Thought Police are slowly hammering the nails into the coffin which our liberty will soon be buried," is an excellent article written a few months ago in the Mail. But if you want to know what's coming in Britain, unless we deal with it, it is a dictatorship. And of course, if we want to say who's at the moment undermining the British nation state and the British Constitution as fast as possible, where here's 2 of the key players. Ken Clarke laughing and joking with Lord Mandelson, and also Danny Alexander is in the background there in the pro-EU fight back. Never mind the fact that Europe is falling apart, there are riots, massive unemployment, and the euro is collapsing. These 2 men are desperate to get Britain fully locked into it, and the fact that we have a so-called Tory sitting next to a so-called New Labour man shows us that British politics is of course a complete sham.
We've got to remember that that so-called Tory was the man that brought Tony Blair to the Bilderberg Group, so he has a history of working closely with New Labour.
Nice.
Well, there are different colours, but of course there is only one party running in Britain at the moment. If we look into its origins, and we're going to be getting close to that, these are very dangerous people. If we just take one more look at what's going on though with this lobbying for the for Britain in Europe, we've got another policy, the policy centre, the Centre for British Influence. That was mentioned in the Clarke Mandelson article. And we thought it'd be interesting just to take a peek at a couple of the people. So there's a gentleman called Peter Wilding at the bottom of the screen. His background, of course, is in banking. They all are. But here's another one, and we particularly enjoyed this gentleman, David Gow. He's a mainstream journalist. He's obviously a complete Europhile, but on his little mini CV, he boasts that he loves oodles of good wine and food. So we thought this gentleman is a perfect advert for the European Union. Average people descending into poverty. Meanwhile, the elite within the EU are gorging themselves on the food mountains and wine mountains.
Good wine.
Good wine, of course. Well, they will only afford the best. Talking of elites, it leads us on to Prince Charles. Mike, you picked up this gentleman.
Well, a couple of days ago, Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands decided that she should abdicate in favour of her son, and Prince Charles is a bit concerned that he's going to pop his clogs before he gets the chance to take the throne himself. So this article is just pointing out that he's interested by the abdication of Queen Beatrix, clearly hoping that his mother will step aside.
Well, desperate maybe, rather than interested.
Well, I think I'm correct in saying that he said that he would be a little while ago, he said he would be very happy to be Prince of Europe. Now, presumably, prefer to be King of Europe, but we'll watch that space. What have the police been up to?
Please, I couldn't believe this article. Weapons. This weapon was shown at a Las Vegas, it was called the SHOT Show in Las Vegas only last week. It's been designed by a British security firm, and it's a high-velocity DNA tagging system. And basically it comes in a pistol and rifle form, and it would allow police to remain 30 to 40 metres from a target and then tag them with a selected DNA high-velocity pellet that contains a unique DNA code to ensure that the correct person is apprehended at a later date. The company that are making these, Selector Mark, I just had a quick look, and apparently they also deal with state-of-the-art RFID tags. They didn't say chips, they just mentioned the tags, but you presume if they're doing one thing with RFID, they're more than likely doing other things with them. And these pellets are going to be used by all police forces around the country.
Indeed they are. Now, I've just remembered with great embarrassment that, of course, we have Patrick Henningsen who's with us. We can bring you in a little bit early here, Patrick. Any comments on the use of this DNA gun?
I think it's really interesting, Brian, that you have, especially obviously the conversation in America is that they want to have gun control in the public sphere, and yet the state, seeking a monopoly of force, is coming out with these new and interesting technologies. But as far as the DNA goes, there's a massive legal issue here. I don't think they would be able to initially use that in this country because there's privacy issues, there's human rights issues. But the point is, Brian, the products are existing and they're being developed as we speak. What you see at the SHOT Show is just tip of the iceberg of what is being developed in R&D labs all over the world. And these are devices that support the police state.
Something that's interesting here is a matter of health. It says here, on contact with the target, the uniquely coded selector DNA solution leaves synthetic DNA trace mark that will enable the relevant authorities to confirm and eliminate people from their investigation. So it's putting some sort of synthetic chemical in. So what are the health implications, being soaked into the skin?
You've made the point, Patrick. This is all the machinery of an emerging police state, a dictatorship. So we'll continue to watch this. And of course, people should be concerned. And if you want to stop it, start talking about it. What's G4S been up to?
Well, G4S, because we've had Ben Fellows on the past prior to the Olympics, they've lost some contracts. Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Hertfordshire police have discontinued negotiations with G4S. There was apparently £1 million deal that was put in by those three police forces to outsource things such as IT, finance, personnel stuff and a lot of administration roles. But these three forces have decided not to go with G4S after the mess they made at the Olympics. So that apparently they are still looking for other companies
Contract.
to
Well,
to
they're a
outsource
billion pound contract
Absolutely.
company, so this is not going to destroy them.
Yeah.
But I think what it does show is that when the truth comes out, and the truth came out with the shambles around G4S,
Yeah.
it does damage them. In fact, we'll have to produce it. Somebody sent us in a wonderful cartoon. I'll just repeat this story because it's positive. But we've been talking about drones, and somebody kindly sent in a picture of what they called a truth drone. So imagine a drone flying over the country. What is the weapon it's armed with? The truth.
Be
And those
excellent.
are our drones. So we'll produce a picture for those. But if you want to stop what's happening, just start talking about it.
Yep.
Mike, you've been investigating benefits.
Right. So, we'll start off just before going to the main story. We'll start off with Alex Shelbrook MP, who's the MP for Elmet and Rothwell, and he put in a private member's bill to Parliament in December last year, proposing the use of prepaid sort of debit card type of thing for benefits claimants. And what he was saying was that instead of benefits claimants being paid into their bank account, or where they don't have a bank account being paid in cash, that they should receive a prepaid card from the benefits agency. But he was then going further, because he was talking about banning people that use these cards from buying cigarettes, from buying alcohol, for paying for Sky TV, and things that he considers non-essential items. So that private member's bill went in December. I believe it had its second reading a few days ago, but I haven't found out what happened there. Right, so then if we look at the next one, basically his Wikipedia thing, there's an interesting comment at the end of this where it says, it has been suggested that the impetus for his proposal originated with the MasterCard Corporation, who had lobbied for the proposal at each of the main party conferences in 2012. Now, I phoned his constituency office today to find out whether in fact he had been approached by MasterCard, and it was quite an interesting conversation, because they absolutely denied that MasterCard had been near them, and in fact they got quite aggressive, perhaps is the word. Not really. They weren't really aggressive in the way they were.
Wobbly.
They certainly got wobbly. Basically suggested that anybody making any such suggestion that he had done this through a request from MasterCard would be taken further into the courts and so on, right? So they were clearly extremely scared of any implication of a cash for questions type scenario going on here. So I just want to make it clear that his office has absolutely denied that MasterCard had any influence on his private member's bill. They say that this is absolutely their idea.
Yeah, sounds like you pressed a hot button though.
Right. So then today, Demos produced a report called The Power of Prepaid, which is again talking about prepaid cards for benefits recipients. And in The Guardian, we had this article from Claudia Wood called "Welfare Cash Cards Are Much More Than a Tool of State Control." That's a very interesting headline, because what she's quite clearly saying is that cash cards, these welfare cash cards, are a tool of state control, but they're not just a tool of state control. Anyway, this looks very much like any other Guardian article, except that what isn't declared on this article, because it says that the author of this piece is Claudia Wood, and underneath Claudia Wood it says The Guardian. So it implies that she is a Guardian writer. But when you actually click on her profile, you discover that Claudia Wood is in fact Deputy Director of the think tank Demos, and it was Demos that produced this report. So let's look at the report. There's the front page of the report, The Power of Prepaid. And if we look at page 7 of the report, there are two really interesting features of this. The first one is that one of the report authors is Claudia Wood, the person who's written this article in The Guardian. And the second point that's very interesting about this is in the second line. It says, "We would first and foremost like to extend our thanks to MasterCard for providing the support that made this research possible." So I also spoke to MasterCard this morning, and they confirmed that they had made, or they say that they had made no approach to Alex Shelbrooke MP, sorry. But obviously they have helped produce this report, and they were very, very keen to stress that this report is not proposing the limits on card usage, and in fact MasterCard said that they could put no such limits on, and of course that's absolutely not true, because they can do whatever they like, but it's not a problem for them. But they certainly want to try to distance themselves from the proposals to restrict the use of the card. But of course it's all steps along the road, isn't it? And as we just remember from Claudia Wood's article, this is a tool of state control, but it's not just a tool of state control. That's what she's saying in her headline.
Yep. Sorry.
It's a bit cheeky of the Guardian not to make us, make the readers aware that she has influences.
It's disingenuous, it's sneaky, it's subversive, it's very nasty, really. Of course, it was the Guardian, the Scott Trust, that was supporting the drive through the Media Standards Trust for the whole of the Leveson inquiry. So the Guardian's a very interesting newspaper. It's there on the shelves as if it's this intellectual, independent newspaper, but as Mike's demonstrated exceptionally well, when we get into it, we find that they've got a foot in every camp. It's a big octopus. Yeah. But we thought we'd follow the story through, so we did actually speak to Demos, where their media spokesman was happy to confirm that they did receive payment from MasterCard for producing the report, but he assured me that, of course, any Demos report is independent. I had a problem with that, and we're now going to wait to see whether Demos will be open enough to say how much money MasterCard paid them. But if we dig into Demos, we need to start looking at people, which we're going to do very quickly here. Please follow up on it yourself. This is one of the trustees.
No relation.
Okay, Philip Collins. And I'm just pointing out that if we get into his background, well, he's a banker. We've got another one here, John Nell. Now, this is an interesting man because, amongst other things, he's into thought leadership. So if you have enough problems earning enough money to feed your family and look after your home, you want to watch men like John Nell, because he's going to lead your thoughts. And then here he is, Danny Alexander. So I think he was mentioned in the Let's Stay in the European Union, and here he is as part of the Demos staff, basically working on these other agendas. And of course he's had a foot, or has a foot, in the camp with the Treasury. We can't leave out Julia Middleton, because here's Julia. She was one of the founding members of Demos. So we've got a political charity that's hiding through the public sector, and of course was instrumental in attacking mainstream press and media. And here she is showing her background with Demos. But let's get in a bit deeper, because we need to look at men like Martin Jacques. And what's significant is that he was closely involved with Demos, and also
Marx.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just having trouble reading at this distance without putting my glasses on. Editor of the Communist Party of Great Britain's journal Marxism Today. And we've just got a bit of a picture of him. And if we follow this through, I just took one of the sort of articles on Marxism that we can find on the internet. So this is from International Socialism. And here's the gentleman we're interested in, Ralph Miliband, because he was also involved in the setup of Demos.
And he's also the father of...
Well, here he is. And of course, he just happens to be the father of the leaders of the Labour Party at the moment. So it's very, very interesting that a man that declared effectively his service to Marx, and father of the two men at the very top of the Labour Party.
Yeah, it's not very...
what is Demos? What we would say is it's quite a dangerous little organisation. Mike, we just wanted to mention, to show that we are fair in our criticisms,
Yeah, well, in fairness to The Guardian, they did produce this article as well by Ali Fogg called The Dubious Benefits of Welfare Payment Cards. And he has subheaded this: prepaid debit cards for benefits may seem inevitable, but unless they guarantee privacy, they should be fought with fury. I agree with that sentiment, although I disagree with the idea that it is inevitable. And that's really, it has to be said, one of the key points that he makes. He just kind of thinks that there's nothing we can do about it and we shouldn't even try because it's kind of inevitable. I fear that Demos may be righted that payment cards of some description are inevitable, he said. They offer too many advantages and administrative savings to squeezed budgets to be resisted or to be wished away for long. But I would propose to safeguard. He goes on to talk about some other stuff. So have a look at that article as well.
Okay, and of course we're talking about the banks, we're talking about MasterCard, and the Mirror's also talking about banks.
Yes, the great bank robbers, and great picture there. Right, so RBS has been quite widely reported, paying £250 million in bonus this year, despite a £500 million fine. But also reported on the same day, the key point is that RBS and Lloyds, who are both paying out big budget pots, actually are continuing to be in a fairly dodgy state of bankruptcy. Let's be accurate about it, and they're probably going to need a further £10 million funding in order to meet the regulatory rules, for reserves. They're not in any state to actually be doing any kind of business. They need to be put into administration.
So when any small sole trader would be hung out to dry at the moment, the receivers would be they'd be stripped of assets, they'd be taken down the path of bankruptcy. But here are the banks, and all that's happening is we, the taxpayer, are pumping in further money. This is fraud, isn't it?
Well, it's more than fraud. It's theft, because what they're doing is taking the money that we're pumping in and handing it out in bonuses.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Do we know how much bonuses, the end of year bonuses, RBS and
250 they're mentioned for
£250 million. At the same time, they need another £10 billion injection.
Shocking.
That doesn't work for me.
No. Yeah, and of course, Mr. Osborne is fully aware of what's happening here. So presumably, Chancellor George Osborne is supporting criminal fraud within the banks, so perhaps it's time the police were knocking on his door. Patrick, are you there?
Yes, Brian.
Well, it's good to have you back on the show. I know you've got a bit of colour to your face because you've been in the sun. Tell us what the result of your trip to the Middle East has been.
It's been a very informative trip. I was in the United Arab Emirates, which was very interesting on a business level, a financial level. The place is awash with hydrocarbon dollars. And also in Beirut, in Lebanon, and we did some excursions to the Israeli border region, and also making a lot of interviews within the country in Beirut with veteran journalists and so forth. And also getting a lot of inside information about what's happening in Syria from Syrian refugees and Syrian people.
Yeah.
So
how would you sum up the Syrian situation at the moment?
The situation in Syria, I thought before Christmas that this was going to be a protracted, longer than expected internal conflict. It's not a civil war. And I think anybody who uses that term civil war in Syria is grossly misappropriating the language. So it's definitely a conflict. It's being stoked from outside, and of course, in the last week, and I've been in touch with you guys, and we've uncovered a number of developments, including the Saudi Prince Bandar Al Nursa Front movement. In fact, there was just in Aleppo today, they just found a load of dead bodies. Apparently, this was a mass execution, which was taken by the opposition group, Free Syrian Army, whatever you want to call it, under this banner of Al Nursa. And my guess is that this mass execution is people who didn't want to join because the intel that we saw last week was that those who refused to join this united front would die. So you take the money or you die. Basically, that's the choice. And the reason is because politically, the West, talking mainly about Washington and London, they have to be able to deal with a tangible opposition group. They need to put a name to it. They need to have some sort of cohesiveness, because at the moment there is none in Syria. There's a load of marauding sort of rival Al-Qaeda gangs who are getting support, money, funding, arms, logistics from the same sources, but they don't have any cohesion on the ground. So this is a problem for the friends of Syria and people like William Hague and Hillary Clinton, who's on her way out. John Kerry will be able to pick up this ball and try to run it towards the goal line for the United States. But so yeah, that's what's going on now. It's absolutely ugly. All the reports that I've heard firsthand in the last 3 weeks was that the black market is being controlled by these gangs of terrorists, and there is definitely activity coming from over the border of Turkey into the country, and this is being coordinated by the CIA and also by NATO intelligence. So, and also Jordan is involved, and obviously we know about Qatar and Syria. And my website is blocked in Qatar, actually, funny enough. At least it was last week. So I don't know, maybe that means there's something on my website that's accurate. But, or it was just an IT glitch, I'm not sure. But anyway, yeah, so there's a lot going on. The Russian position in Syria is also something that is really come to the forefront. So yes, the Lavrov has announced, a couple weeks ago, they're pulling Russian citizens and so forth from the country, but it remains to be seen how significant that is. But definitely, Assad is rearming. It formed a new paramilitary army that's concentrating on urban warfare, because the defense form that they have is mainly for national defense, and it doesn't really work for urban guerrilla warfare. So they formed a new paramilitary unit that's being deployed in cities like Homs and Hama and potentially Aleppo. But yeah, you've got a massive problem here. Most people in Lebanon believe that Syria will become balkanized.
Okay, we got
broken into two.
Okay, we've just got to. I think Mike just wants to ask you something here.
Yeah, Patrick, there's quite a bit of sort of coverage of drug money, drug laundering, and drug money being used to finance the so-called Islamists in northern Africa. Is there any hints? Are there any hints of that in Syria?
I wouldn't know, but the drug corridor that you'd be talking about in Syria would be the drug corridor, which is the heroin business, which has traditionally run through Turkey, and also the Kurds. The Kurds are the ethnic group that straddle Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Iran, parts of Azerbaijan, and also the Kurdish people are settled in other areas as well. But they have traditionally been a part of that Golden Triangle. So that would be my guess if that was the case. But there's huge amount. The drug money, the drug laundering business has always been a very attractive trough to dip out of with regards to the Western intelligence agencies, because of course it's black money. But there's huge amounts of profits being generated out of Afghanistan. As we know, Afghanistan became the number one, not just the number one heroin producer, but cannabis globally, the number one producer of cannabis. This hashish and marijuana products is coming out of Afghanistan. So there's billions of dollars of black money being generated there, and it's certainly enough to fund things. But the amount of cash that Qatar and Saudi Arabia have at their disposal that would the West would have to use black funds from drug laundering or transportation, but the Gulf states are certainly there with real cash as well. So I don't know.
Right. Okay. We'll have to end there because we're a little bit tight for time today. But thank you very much for that report, and I hope we'll be seeing you again shortly.
Thanks, Patrick.
Okay.
Okay. Jumping across to other subjects, there's been a fairly interesting article appearing in The Independent, which the title is "Senior British Rabbi Filmed Telling Alleged Child Abuse Victim Not to Go to the Police." What's the background to this one, Mike?
Well, the Independent is just saying that this rabbi has been filmed telling an alleged victim of child abuse not to go to the police. He is a leader of the UK's strictly Orthodox Jewish community. He told the victim that it was masira, or forbidden, to report a suspected Jewish sex offender to a non-Jewish authority,
Right.
And that going to the police was not a great thing to do. It's sort of shades of the Catholic Church here, really, doesn't it?
Well, what we're seeing is sort of divisive, isn't it? If we break people away from a common law, we're going into very dangerous places, I think.
Yeah.
But we're also seeing the Sun up to something.
Yeah,
the Sun is reporting.
Yeah, they've reported. Apparently, judges have come out and said that the CRB checks that are done actually breach human rights. The CRB checks were introduced back in 2002 after Ian Huntley murdered Jessica Chapman and Holly Wells. But apparently the Home Office are about to appeal against judges' ruling about the CRB check, and Sarah Payne, the mother of the murdered little girl, Sarah Payne, she's come out and spoken up against what the judges are ruling.
But we've had for some time now the situation where it's only British-born people that are being CRB checked.
Yeah.
So with an open borders policy at the moment, other people that come into Britain, it's too difficult to check their backgrounds, and certainly that's going to be the case with Bulgaria and Romania. But it is with a lot of other Eastern Europeans. So we've got a two-tier system. If you're British-born,
you have to have
you've got a CRB check, or at least you've been living in Britain for some length of time.
Yeah.
You get your background checked, but other people don't get their background checked.
Anyone who comes in. Apparently, the courts have said it's unlawful to make job applicants disclose offences to work with children.
Right. Well, we're still watching with great interest for the result of the police's investigation into paedophile rings in positions of high places, and in particular Westminster and the elites within the country, and we're going to keep you informed on that. But of course, if we break down and get rid of protection for our children, what sort of country have we got? We're being attacked, basically. And this is a bit serious here. We've got a little sound problem crept in there, a little gremlin.
Yeah, this story, it was in the Mail this morning. Injections, back to the vaccines. Apparently they've now developed a patch that will have loads of microneedles that will go underneath the skin, I suppose just a bit like an RFID chip, and it will deliver radical new DNA vaccines. They claim the system can even be used to deliver DNA vaccines for risky diseases. The new tattoo is made of creating a patch made of layers of polymers embedded with the DNA vaccine, and once it's under the skin, the films degrade, and they come as soon as they come into contact with water, and then they release the vaccine over a few days and a few weeks. And I mean, to me, this is just for people who are scared of needles, etc. They'll be jumping at this, but I think this possibly could be programming people into getting things put underneath their skin.
Or being chipped, the mark of the beast.
I will just say, I know many people who've had problems with the pill, that the new contraception that goes underneath the skin.
Right.
A few people that I know have had major problems and went straight back after a couple of weeks to have it ripped out because of the problems and the damage it was doing to their health. So is this just conditioning for
if you're interested in this type of article and you want to help us, please research, because the more digging you can do, the more you talk, the more likely we are to stop this coming in. I'm sorry about this slide. It does feature Tony Blair, but I think you found this one.
Well, after our opinion of him and the majority of British people apparently who can't stand the man, Poland are calling him a hero, and he won an award for that's come from the Polish business leaders in Warsaw, and they're praising him for transforming entry into the EU. Around 700,000 Eastern Europeans migrated to the UK from former communist nations, and they were admitted to the European Union in 2004. And between 75,000 to 532,000 Polish people have come into the country since 2003, and they're hailing Mr. Blair and thanking him for all his help to let other people in the country.
And we just add to that the UK column team are being helped by Polish people, as with a variety of other nationalities, and the issue here is who is opening our borders and not the people being invited. Mike?
Yeah, I don't believe that article, by the way.
You don't believe it?
I don't believe any of it, so just wanted to say
that he
that.
won an award?
Yeah.
You don't believe it? No,
well, there's a challenge for viewers today. Then we've put the article up from the Mail. They're saying that it's real. Can anybody help us establish whether, in fact, that this is a scam article?
It was the Polish Business Leaders Awards ceremony in Warsaw.
It was a very small award.
Very small.
And what we got here more? Oh, well, this is Bill Gates. It was just a sort of
just an update on Bill Gates, that he appeared last night at a David Dimbleby lecture, and cheering for the new polio vaccine that he has.
It is a bit worrying when you get a mix of IT, Microsoft with health issues. There's something just not right.
Well, we know his views on depopulation as well, so
okay.
Scary.
Well, we've largely been talking about a police state coming into force, so it's probably pertinent that we go to the police. And a Telegraph article here which is saying that foreigners could run UK police forces within years, and the key issue that we're looking at here is, what do we know about the people that could be brought in to come into Britain's police force? Would they be loyal to Queen, country, nation, state, or would they have another agenda? And of course, if it's impossible to do full background checks, we've no idea who's coming in. We'll just highlight this a little bit with a look at what's happening at the moment. But of course, we've got ACPO, the Association of Chief Police Officers, being run as a private company. We've got the government in unbelievable arrogance saying that British-born police are not good enough. What an insult to British policemen, men and women. We are seeing that British police are increasingly being turned into a paramilitary force, and in particular more and more automatic weapons are being issued to the police, let alone DNA guns. And then of course we've got controversial figures like Bill Bratton, the US super cop, who Cameron has had several attempts at trying to bring in through the back door in order to take over Britain's police. And if you ask UK Column Live team why this is happening, we will simply say because the objective is to produce a police force of a dictatorship. The president of Association of Chief Police Officers is of course Sir Hugh Orde, and we just took a little look at him and we were very interested that he's a member of the Police Executive Research Forum, which just happens to be an American organisation. Do go and have a look at it because we don't get a warm feeling about it. But not only is he a member sitting with American police and senior police from other countries to decide presumably what the next round of automatic weapons should be. It's quite interesting that you can only join the club if you've got a degree from a 4-year course. So if you're a police constable that's worked your way up through the ranks, you know the job inside out because you've learnt it on the streets and on the beat. You can't join this club because, I'm sorry chum, you don't have a degree.
Shocking.
We're going to need the police to sort themselves out.
Yeah. And
we're going to leave you in a cloud, I think.
Yeah, apparently, it's come out in The Independent today that British internet users who use cloud services, including Google Drive, can be spied on routinely without their knowledge by the American government. And it's emerged that all documents uploaded onto the cloud system it's all failing. George Bush brought in all this back in 2008, and the information can be intercepted and stored in bulk as it enters US via the undersea cable crossing the Atlantic Oceans. And basically everything that you put onto cloud now can be accessed for the US to
Mike.
look at.
Yeah, look, the key point is that everything that anybody does on the internet, which is run by anybody else, is at risk of this kind of thing.
But it's good that the Independent are highlighting it and actually coming out with it.
Well, yeah, but you know, it's common sense,
Yeah.
isn't it? So you know, be sensible about how you use the internet. But as we've always said, don't do less, do more.
Yeah, do more. Let's get more of the truth out, and remember the truth drones, and we'll be showing you a picture. We may have a picture of a truth drone tomorrow. So thank you very much for joining us. If you like what we're doing, we appreciate your emails, letters and texts of support. Keep those coming. Please keep researching, and if you feel you can make a subscription to the UK column, please do. Mike?
Yeah, just, you know, anybody that's watching this as an archive on YouTube, please join us live,
Yeah.
1 o'clock every
definitely.
day.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye.